LoveLore Library. Chapter 495. Imperial Concubine Ro. Actually, did she forget how the previous empress died and why she was drowned in the lake? She actually followed suit. Was she really so bold that she didn't even want her life anymore? Lu Qingrou's face was pale. Feng Jiuqing gently cupped her chin and looked at her beautiful and gentle little face, his fingertips gently rubbing against it. It had to be said that this face was even more beautiful than those women in the harem. Even Gu Yueqin couldn't compare to this beautiful face. But this Shen has been busy recently and neglected my beloved imperial concubine. So that my beloved imperial concubine has another man in this harem. His tone suddenly became deep and ambiguous, and it was accompanied by a low chuckle. By the time Lu Qingru reacted, her entire body had already been carried horizontally by Feng Jiuqing. Lu Qingrou's face changed and Lu Hui hurriedly tried to stop him. "Your imperial concubine." Gao Dezhong hurriedly grabbed Lu Hui's arm and dragged her out of the hole. This little girl looked so skinny, but how could she struggle with so much strength? "Let me go. Beloved imperial concubine is my woman, why should this Shen let you go? Don't you know that I've had affairs with many men?" "Feng Jiuqing, I'm so dirty, do you still have the heart to do it?" The man threw her on the bed unceremoniously, his strength was a bit stronger than before. He pressed on her without any tenderness. Feng Jiuqing's thin lips hooked up into a faint smile. Beloved imperial concubine doesn't feel dirty, let alone the Shin. With that, he didn't give her a chance to resist at all, took off her thin clothes and went in. Lu Qingru originally knew how to struggle, but in the end, she forgot to struggle, only tears slid down her cheeks. The fact that she and Feng Jiuqing had merged their bodies, she didn't know if Qin would blame her. In matters of love, the man didn't have the slightest emotion, he only vented to her, he wouldn't kiss her, he wouldn't touch her. Lu Qingru felt pain all over her body. She bit her lower lip, not allowing herself to make a shameful sound. Feng Jiuqing, she knew that this man was deliberately using this method to torture her, because he knew that this was more unacceptable than killing her. He knew that she felt injustice for Qin in her heart, so he wanted her. Not only did he want her to sink into hatred every day, he wanted her to sink into self-blame and regret. "Your Highness, you can't go in. His Majesty and concubine Ro are outside the palace, looking at Gao Dezhong who was desperately trying to stop her." Shen Yueji glared at him fiercely. Had he forgotten who he was after not needing her for a few days? Gao Dezhong felt guilty under her glare. Of course, he knew who he was, but the emperor was now doting on concubine Ro, how could he let her in? In short, it wouldn't be good if the imperial consort saw this. "Imperial concubine, please save my imperial concubine." "His Majesty. His Majesty," Lu Hui knelt down in front of her crying. Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red and swollen. It was obvious that she had been crying for a long time. Her hoarse voice made people's scalps go numb, almost unable to speak because of her crying. Shen Yueji no longer hesitated. Seeing that Gao Dezhong was still desperately trying to stop her, she narrowed her eyes dangerously, and her voice became several levels colder. "Gao Dezhong, how dare you? You even dare to stop me, quickly get out of the way." Chapter 496. Gao Dezhong was shocked and didn't dare to stop her anymore after being scolded by her. He could only obediently take a step back. "Imperial concubine, I stopped you for your own good, but His Majesty is now." Shen Yueji's heart was full of Lu Qingru now. She didn't care what he had to say and rushed in without thinking. Shuangshi also followed her footsteps. Inside the hall, there was nothing at all. Shen Yueji quickly walked to the inner hall. The red curtain was put down, and she could vaguely see the entangled figures inside. Her eyes were instantly fixated on it, and she couldn't move her eyes away. At this moment, she couldn't tell what she was feeling. However, she still quickly stepped forward and lifted the curtain. Both of them were familiar faces. One was extraordinarily handsome, and the other was beautiful and gentle. Their clothes were not removed, but their lower bodies were tightly pressed together. The large clothes covered the place where the two of them were entangled, but this made one's imagination even more wild and fanciful. Feng Jiuqing's movement stopped because of the sudden intrusion of Shin Yueji. For some reason, when he saw Shin Yueji suddenly appearing here, the man looked stunned for a moment. After he reacted, he quickly withdrew from Lu Qingrou's body. If it was anyone else, he would have been angry. But when he saw that it was Shin Yueji, he didn't get angry, but in the depths of his heart, there was a trace of panic. Seeing eunuch Gao's panic outside and Lu Hui's heart-wrenching cry, I thought there was some conflict between the emperor and Sister Ro Fei, but I didn't expect. Her tone was more sarcastic. It's me who overstepped. You can continue. After saying that, she turned around and left without looking back. Yueji. When Shin Yueji walked a few steps, the man behind her had already dressed up and walked quickly towards her. Shin Yueji didn't listen and didn't have the slightest intention to stop. Feng Jiuqing took her hand and stopped her from going forward. Is the emperor explaining to imperial concubine Shin? Behind him, Lu Qingrou's funny and sweet voice sounded, I am the same as Sister Imperial Concubine, we are both the emperor's women. Who the emperor favors, isn't it a matter of the emperor's words? Gui Fei is really too much. Do you really think that just because His Majesty is good to you, he can pamper you alone? That's right. You and Ben Gong are both His Majesty's women. Who His Majesty favors is his own business. Ben Gong has never felt that just because His Majesty is good to Ben Gong, he can only favor Ben Gong. At this moment, Shin Yueji didn't care about the rules. As long as she thought of the two entangled figures, she felt disgusted. She unceremoniously shook off the man's hand. Your Majesty, don't let Ro Fei's sister wait anxiously. If this woman doesn't get satisfied, her temper is very bad. Imperial consort. The emperor's face darkened. He didn't turn around to look at Lu Qingrou behind him. Instead, he ignored Shin Yueji's struggles and carried her in his arms as he walked out. Shin Yueji did not struggle. She leaned into his embrace and looked at the girl behind the curtain through his arm. The smirk on her face was so bright that it burned her eyes. What hurt her was not the fact that she had an affair with Feng Jiuqing, but, in order to avenge her, she was willing to do such a despicable thing. All along, she thought that she was alone, but there was someone else who was avenging her and planning for her. This was the first time she met Lu Qingrou face to face. She didn't expect that under such circumstances. She almost blurted out, Qingrou, I am actually Xian, I'm back. Chapter 497. But she would not ignore the man who was holding her at this moment. The man carried her all the way to the imperial garden. The flowers in the imperial garden were in full bloom. Not feeling the struggle of the woman in his arms, Feng Jiuqing gently put her down. Her feet touched the ground. Shin Yueji turned and left. Yuji. Feng Jiuqing held her hand and helplessly called her name. I have my reasons for doing this. Of course, I know that your Majesty has his reasons for doing this. I also left wisely and did not disturb your Majesty and Sister Ro Fei's love. But your Majesty, it was you who chased her out. Shin Yueji looked wronged. Luckily, I knew that your Majesty suddenly went to Huayong Palace because Sister Ro Fei was sick, so I came to see her. Who knew that I would see this scene? Since I ascended the throne, I have been busy with the affairs of the court and neglected the concubines. The ministers in the court have submitted a petition to me many times. I can't be alone anymore and not step into the chambers of the concubines in the harem. Ro Fei, I promised her father that I would not kill her. She secretly colluded with the people of Jianghu and spread rumors in the harem. I can't ignore her when she causes trouble. Your Majesty's reason is to go to bed with her. The Emperor looked a little unhappy. Yu, I can't tell you the reason in detail. You just need to remember that I am not the kind of person who is obsessed with beauty. He hugged Shin Yueji from behind. I have always kept my promise to you. Give me time, you just need to stay in Feng Qi Palace and do nothing. I will pave the way for you. But I just can't stand the fact that your Majesty favors other women. I am narrow-minded. As long as I see your Majesty with other women, I feel uncomfortable. Shin Yueji hugged the man's strong waist. I don't want to be the Empress. I just want your Majesty to accompany me forever. The girl's complaining tone softened the Emperor's heart. He held her little hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yu, believe in me. He had deceived many people, but the one in front of him was the only one he didn't want to deceive. In the past, he only knew that the throne was important, that the country was important, but he forgot that he had always been alone by his side. Now, he selfishly wanted the country, and he also wanted her. He couldn't say that he loved Shin Yueji, but he definitely liked her. For her, he would personally plot. In this world, apart from himself, there was no one else who could make him scheme against her. Shin Yueji was the first. She saw the thin lips of the man pressing down on her. Shin Yueji instinctively struggled out of the man's embrace. Her small face suddenly became incomparably pale. Emperor, this concubine is in pain. Sure enough, seeing the man's expression, he went to check the wound on her body, but when you argued with me just now, the wound opened again. Where does it hurt? Let me take a look. It hurts everywhere. The young emperor didn't know where to start. Looking at the young girl again, other than the pale face just now, there was no sign of weakness or pain on her face. She knew that she had been tricked by her. The man only felt that it was funny. He couldn't help but scratch her nose. Little girl, do you feel better now? Your Majesty, this concubine's wound really hurts a little. I'm not playing with you. You know, this concubine's injury is so serious, and I just came back. The wound must have opened in some places. Chapter 498. Feng Zhiqing looked at her tenderly and carried her again. I will send you back to Feng Qi Palace first. Your Highness, His Majesty seems to want to stay with you. Why did you drive him away? Shin Yueji wiped the place on her wrist where the man had grabbed her. After Feng Zhiqing carried her back to Feng Qi Palace, she drove him away with the excuse that she was tired and wanted to rest. Then, as soon as he left, she asked Double Happiness to fetch water to wipe her hand. Why did you stay if you don't drive him away? Is it annoying to see? Shin Yueji smiled coldly and rubbed her wrist even harder. The skin on her delicate and smooth wrist was broken and blood was faintly visible. Double Happiness panicked when she saw how hard she was rubbing. Your Highness, why are you so hard on yourself? If you are unhappy, you can abuse others. Abuse who? Shin Yueji stared at her. Your Majesty, can I abuse others? Concubine Ro. Concubine Ro's rank is below yours, but she still dares to speak rudely to you. Just because the Emperor favors her, she starts to show off to you. The name Concubine Ro was like a thorn in Shin Yueji's heart. She no longer focused on wiping her red wrist. By the way, Your Highness, Master Kong Yin has left the palace. Do you want me to summon him again? No need. Go to Huayang Palace and find Concubine Ro. Double Happiness was speechless. She just said it casually. Did Her Highness really plan to go to Huayang Palace to abuse Concubine Ro? Double Happiness accepted her fate and followed her to Huayang Palace. At this moment, Huayong Palace was still the same as before. It was desolate and lifeless. Even Lu Hui, who was waiting outside, was nowhere to be seen. Your Highness, should I go in to pass the message? No need. There are only 2 people on the left and right. There is no need to pass the message. Interrupting double happiness, Shin Yueji stepped in first. The fierce conversation between men and women in the hall made Shin Yueji's footsteps slightly stop. There were men inside. What? After the Emperor touched you, he won't allow me to touch you again. Do you really think that after the Emperor touched you, you will be favored again? What does it have to do with you? Why don't you take advantage of this opportunity to get lost? The man was so angry that his voice was hoarse. You bitch. I think you really have the guts to indulge in fantasy. Let me tell you, I didn't work for you for nothing. You want me to scram without compensation. Dream on. As the man pressed down hard on the woman, she couldn't move at all. Her clothes were torn apart by him again. Lu Hui angrily threw something at him. How dare you? Didn't you hear what my lady said? Hurry up and get lost. Get lost. After all, she was a woman. No matter how much strength she used, in front of a man, it was just like scratching an itch. The man glanced sideways at Lu Hui, who had been pushed to the ground. This little maidservant could be considered somewhat beautiful, but compared to Lu Qingru, she was still too far off. If it weren't for the fact that he had already tasted the intoxicating taste of this woman, perhaps he wouldn't mind having a taste of this maidservant. Master and servant serving him together. Just thinking about it made him feel good. He could only think like this. Because behind him, a sharp dagger entered his body and came out from the position of his heart. He could feel the pain of his heart being pulled out. The man couldn't believe it and wanted to look back. The master and servant were both under his eyes. He didn't think that in this Huayong palace that had always been empty, there would actually be someone else. Chapter 499. The moment he rolled down from the bed, the man finally saw the person behind him. A master and a servant, the stunning face was covered with haze. He opened his mouth, but could not even say a word. His body fell down powerlessly, losing his vitality. Lu Hui screamed and rushed forward to support Lu Qingru. She carefully helped her put on the messy clothes. Nyang nyang, nyang nyang, are you okay? Lu Qingru let her wear her clothes, but her eyes fell on Shin Yueji, probably a little surprised that she came back. She thought that she came here to find trouble with her, but when she saw that she ordered her maid to kill the man who bullied her, she had a different idea in her heart. Although she was not willing to admit it, was she helping her? She put on her clothes neatly and got off the bed with a pale face. Is Imperial concubine coming to find trouble with me? Nyang nyang, Lu Hui called her carefully. Today when His Majesty was here, it was also Imperial concubine who rushed in to save you. Counting it, this was already the second time. Lu Hui also found a chance to thank Shin Yueji. Thank you Imperial concubine Shin for saving my life. Ha! The corner of her mouth raised a sneer. Save me. The eldest daughter of the Shin family is arrogant and does not allow others to covet the things she likes. Hui, do you think that she is helping me? Imperial concubine Ro, why are you so ungrateful? If my imperial concubine did not come, you would have been molested by this man today. My imperial concubine is kind, how can you be like this, not grateful at all? Shuang Shi said discontentedly on the side. Shin Yueji looked at her. Shuang Shi, you go out first. Nyang nyang. It is not a good idea to leave a man's body here. You go and drag the body out and find a place to dispose of it. Yes. Shuang Shi obediently went forward to deal with the man's body. Lu Hui also came forward to help her. Miss Shuang Shi, I know where to put the man's body without being found. You come with me. I will help you. This sentence, in private, revealed a lot of meaning. Just by allowing one to comprehend it, one would be able to comprehend a thing or two. After the two of them worked together to move the corpse out, Shinyuaji glanced at the young girl who was sitting on the beauty chair and drinking tea. After not seeing her for a long time, her face no longer had the immaturity she had before they entered the palace. Right now, she couldn't clearly describe the woman in front of her. She sighed silently, walked to the coffee table beside the woman, and sat down. The word caused Lu Qingrou's thin and delicate body to stiffen. Her expression changed slightly, but she didn't look at Shinyueji. Instead, she stared at the teacup in her hand. The clear tea reflected her pale face. It had been a long time since she had heard such a form of address. Even her father and mother would only lovingly call her Qingru. Only that person would call her She took the term as lingering. Ever since she died, these murmurs would only appear in her dreams. However, what appeared was her bloodied face, her pained expression after being tortured. It was her drenched in blood as she ran towards her, saying, I'm in so much pain, please save me. I'm in pain, I'm really in pain. The water is so cold, it's so horrible down there, I'm so lonely. There were tears in her eyes. Not long after, they spread into a river and rushed down into the teacup, merging with the clear tea. Is it worth it? Chapter 500. Seeing her like this, Shinyueji could not bear to see her like this. She got up and walked in front of her. Her hand fell on her shoulder and she could feel her trembling. Is Imperial Consort here to persuade me? That day, Mo Wushang and I were in the Imperial Garden and saw you and that man. Really? She smiled slightly and her eyes were full of mockery. The way she looked at Shinyueji was also full of sarcasm. Actually, I already knew that there was someone in the Imperial Garden that night. But even if there was someone, so what? Shinyueji, are you here to show off to me? Showing off that the regent, who was once infatuated with Qin, is now wholeheartedly following you and only has you in his heart. He has long forgotten about Qin, right? Her tone was full of sarcasm, unwillingness and sarcasm. No. Her hand still fell on her shoulder. I just feel that there is no need for you to do this. Guiyuqin is already dead. Even if you do all this for her, she will not see it. You obviously have your own path to walk. Why do you need to make such a fearless sacrifice for her? The dead can't see it. Does Imperial Consort Shin think that I did all this just to let her see it? Sometimes, for a person's good, it is not just to let her know, but to think for her in the dark. Lu Qingru smiled and bluntly patted her hand off her shoulder. You are not me. How do you know if everything I have done is worth it? I used the lives of my whole family just to exchange for her. After so long, I still have not regretted it. Sacrifice. From the moment I sacrificed for her, I have long disregarded my own life. Why would I be afraid of these so-called sacrifices? Shinyueji, Mo Wushang really loved you so much that he actually told you about me. Do you know how much Mo Wushang sacrificed for Qin, when she was still alive? After she died, how many times did he want to follow her? She saw that Shinyueji did not speak and laughed instead. This man, he appears to be deeply in love. In the end, isn't he still a lamp extinguished after his death? Unwilling to bear the loneliness, he fell in love with another woman. Imperial concubine Shen is a good example. Do you think that Mo Wushang dotes on you, loves you, and protects you? I believe that not long after your death, he will also fall in love with someone else because he can't stand the loneliness. Men are all the same. Vows of undying love and devotion, but these are all fake. They only know how to deceive, only know how to use these sweet words to make women happy, but in reality, once they get what they want, they'll be ruthless. I just pity my Qin. Lu Qingru helplessly shook her head. Why didn't she listen to my advice? Back then, I advised her not to fall so deeply, she would harm herself, but she just wouldn't listen. Every time she saw her engrossed in Feng Zhiqing's gentleness and deep love towards her, her heart would ache as if it was being pricked by needles. He watched as the woman he liked threw herself into the arms of another man. He watched as the woman he deeply loved no longer belonged to him. She would also marry someone else, and would also grow old with that man. And she could only bury this deep love deep in her heart, not letting anyone know. It's not that she didn't listen to your advice. It's just that she was too deeply in love, so how could she listen? Others would criticize the man she likes, saying all his faults. Chapter 501. Shen Yueji's words made Lu Qingru suddenly raise her head to look at her. You were once proud and aloof, but now you're sacrificing so much for her. Do you think she would be happy to see this? Why don't you think about it? If you can live on peacefully, that would be the best compensation and response to her. Why do you still want to punish yourself like this? What do you know? Shen Yueji, from what angle are you standing now to lecture me? Did Imo Wushang ask you to come and talk to me? If he really had Qin in his heart, why would he hook up with you? One by one, all of you have betrayed Qin, and now you still want to collude with one another to make me betray her. None of you are good. None. All of you are evil. Evil. Scram. Scram. She suddenly threw the teacup in her hand towards Shen Yueji. Shen Yueji didn't dodge and just watched as the teacup smashed into her forehead. A bruise could be seen on her forehead and blood flowed down. Shen Yueji swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue several times. She didn't know, in this situation, if she told Lu Qingru that she was Gu Yueqin, would she harm her or save her? Or rather, would she believe it? She was already dead, and after her death, her soul was reborn into the body of the eldest daughter of the Shen family. To an outsider, this was just nonsense. She believed that if she told Lu Qingru about this, she didn't know how Lu Qingru would view her. Concubine Ro, I don't know you, why would I tell you this? I'm the emperor's woman now, even if I have an affair with the regent, I don't think I can do this for him. I'm sincerely trying to persuade you. You have such a good relationship with Gu Yueqin, don't you know what kind of person she is? You sacrificed so much for her when she was alive, how can you punish yourself like this after she died? This concubine knows that you hate these men, even if you hate them to the extreme, you would still kill them. Since you don't like them, why did you force yourself to do those things? Not only is Qin unwilling, even you are unwilling, isn't that right? If you want to avenge Qin there are many other ways, why must you choose this one? Do you think I have a choice? The Lu family is gone, there is nothing left. I am only left with myself. There is only Lu Hui in the palace. We have nothing, no one to rely on, no one to work for us. I can only do this. Shen Yueji, do you think everyone is like you? Since you were young, you've lived a life of luxury. You're high and mighty, and you've been pampered by your parents. Do you know what happened to Qin when she was young? That's easy for you to say. The backing of your Shen family makes it impossible for Feng Zhiqing to touch you. Even in the imperial palace, there are many spies of your Shen family. In order for you to live a carefree life in the harem, your parents have spent a lot of money to plant spies here. Naturally, you don't know what it feels like to be at the end of your rope. Is this what you want? You hooked up with those Jianghu people, spread rumors in the harem, and hurt the innocent. Wasn't Wu Zhaoi's matter you're doing? So what if I am? Lu Qingru did not deny this in the slightest. Shen Yueji, why do you have to be such a busybody? Do you really think that just because you have the backing of the Shen family and Imo Wushang to protect you, my hands can't reach out to you? Chapter 502. From what Ben Gong knows, Wu Zhaoi has only been in the palace for a few days, right? Whether it was when Gu Yuqin was alive or after her death, they did not have any contact, let alone offending Gu Yuqin. Yet you extended your hand to Wu Zhaoi, wanting to take her life. Any woman who enters the palace, since they have become the emperor's woman, they should pay the price for their choice. They should be glad that they died for my Qin. This is their honor. If Gu Yuqin knew that you indiscriminately killed innocent people in the inner palace for her, do you think she would forgive you? Indiscriminately killed innocent people. Isn't Qin also innocent? Did those people think of her? Sympathize with her? Say she is innocent? Imperial concubine Shen, for you to say this, you must not know how tragic Qin's death was, right? Imperial concubine Ro, every grievance has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. Even if the previous empress was still alive, she would know who her enemy was, who she should find to take revenge, and who the people she should kill are. She would not involve these innocent people. Yes, Imperial concubine Shen pitied all living beings, just like Qin in the past. She pitied until death, but no one pitied her. You are wrong. Ben Gong is not a righteous person, I just happen to know who should be killed and who should not be killed. Those who should not be killed are killed. What difference is there between you and those who killed Gu Yuqin? The words pitied all living beings should not be used on me. If I really pitied them, I would not be standing here at this moment, and speak so calmly to Imperial concubine Ro. If Imperial concubine Shen cannot stand it, why not go to the emperor and expose me? Perhaps you do not need to expose me, the emperor cannot kill me. He is the ruler of a country, he needs to keep his promise. Before father died, he made a promise that he would not kill me. Imperial concubine Shen can, but your title is above mine. I have committed so many mistakes, and you already have the witness and material evidence. If you want to kill me, it is just a matter of a word. Even the emperor cannot punish you for this. So, do you want to kill me now? I will not kill you. You won't kill me. Lu Qingru looked at her and suddenly smiled. Just now, when the emperor carried you away, I clearly saw the hatred in your eyes. You seem to want to kill me. Shen Yueji's head was about to split open. My hatred is not towards you. Don't think too much about it, concubine Ro. If not me, then who? If Gu Yuqin didn't die, and she saw everything you did, what would you do? Not understanding why Shen Yueji would suddenly say such a thing, Lu Qingru stared blankly for a long time before looking at her. Her lips felt dry, and she pursed them. What should he do? How could she let Qin see her dirty self? How good would it be if she was still alive? She would definitely peel off all her filthy skin so that she wouldn't feel disgusted. But was it possible? She hoped more than anyone else that Qin could come back to life and see her again. But she was already dead and would never come back to life again. Did Imo Wushang tell you that I wanted to kill you many times? I did. Shen Yueji's expression was indifferent. Since you know that I wanted to kill you, why did you still come here and say these words to me? You wanted to kill me, it was undoubtedly because you felt injustice for Gu Yuqin. You were not reconciled to the fact that I snatched Imo Wushang away, causing his heart to change for Gu Yuqin. Chapter 503. Ro, do you still remember that 3 years ago, you and her accidentally fell into the water? She didn't know how to swim, and neither did you, but you desperately dived into the water and used your small body to support yourself. You used your own life to exchange for a chance for her to breathe. 3 years ago, she remembered every detail of her past with Chin. She had never forgotten a single thing. The scene from 3 years ago replayed in front of her eyes. At that time, there were only the two of them and no one else knew. She raised her head in shock and stared at Shin Yueji. You. How did you know? Shin Yueji looked at her and smiled. Not only do I know this, but I also know that she sneaked out of the Prime Minister's mansion to play with you on the street. She was caught by Prime Minister Gu and was punished with 100 strokes. It was you who took 50 strokes for her and saved her from death. No. No. How did you know all this? You. You shouldn't know. You and Chin have no relationship at all. You have never even seen each other. You are. If I say that I am Gu Yuechin, will you believe me? That one sentence caused Lu Qingrou's eyes to widen abruptly. That pair of eyes that were brimming with hot tears just stared at her like that, and it was unknown what kind of expression she had. The person in front of her was telling her that she was Chin. Their faces were different, their voices were different, and even their mannerisms were different. But she was telling her that she was her Chin. She suddenly smiled and stumbled backwards. Shin Yueji wanted to help her up, but she flung her hand away fiercely. Don't touch me. Shin Yueji, I didn't expect you to be so skillful. In order to stop me from hurting you, you can even say such nonsense. You said that you are Chin, but you want to replace her with just a few words. I knew you wouldn't believe me. That's why I didn't tell you. Other than me, I didn't tell anyone else about my true identity. Seeing her serious expression, without any panic after being exposed, and looking at her eyes, if she looked closely, there was a trace of familiarity. Lu Qingru was shocked that she could portray Chin, so realistically. Even she, if it wasn't for the fact that Chin had died, she would almost think that the woman in front of her was really her Chin, even Hui, didn't know about our past. If I told you all these, would you still think it's fake? Back then, Gu Yueyin ordered someone to bring me medicine to nourish my body, but you didn't care. You ignored my protests and insisted on drinking it. You lay in bed in pain for a day and a night, and I was the one who accompanied you and held your hand. You said that you were in pain, and you even said that it was fortunate that I wasn't the one who drank the medicine. Shin Yueji stepped forward and held her shoulders. She looked straight at her dazed face. Her eyes were red and her voice was choked. At that time, there were only the two of us in the room. They weren't there. You said a lot of things to me. I didn't forget any of them. Did you also forget? Also, when we were in the Prime Minister's residence, in order to bring me out of the Prime Minister's residence, you specially spent more than a month digging a hole at the back of the backyard. That way, every time you came, you could bring me out of the hole. Then, when the time came, you could bring me back. Chapter 504. During the winter, my hands developed abscesses because I was soaked in the bone-chilling water for a long time. You went to buy good medicine for me and applied it on my hands. Then, you went to wash those clothes. Your hands were red from the cold. When your parents found out, they were so distressed that they couldn't sleep well for a few days. There were too many things, too many memories. Every time she said one, Lu Qingrou's gaze would brighten. In the end, she raised her head with tears streaming down her face. She held her hands tightly and said with an emotion that even she couldn't distinguish, You. Are you really Chin? How is that possible? You. Aren't you already dead? You. She had seen her die with her own eyes. She had died so miserably. There were so many nails embedded in her face. Her breathing gradually faded away. She had heard it so clearly. She had seen it so clearly. But how could she? I don't know either. I only know that when I woke up, I looked like this. What about Shinyueji? What about the previous Shinyueji? She was the daughter of General Shinhee. She was doted on since she was young. How? Maybe that day when I was ordered to sink into the lake, she had an argument with someone by the lake and was pushed into the lake. That's why she died. It was such an unbelievable thing. Even if it was confirmed, Lu Qingru still couldn't digest it. She looked at her in shock. She really couldn't fold this face with the previous Qin. However, she knew everything about her past with Qin. There were things that she and Qin clearly remembered, and they clearly hadn't told anyone else about it. Even the maidservant they trusted the most didn't know about it, but she knew everything. Her eyes were filled with tears. Suddenly, she grabbed Shinyueji's hand. Is it you? Is it really you? Qin. It was really her. It was really her. Do you believe me? I believe. As long as Qin says it, I believe it. I believe it. She threw herself into her arms and sobbed uncontrollably. She was like a child. Xan, it's really you. That's great, you're still alive. I can still see you. I really miss you, I really miss you. In this world, other than Qinghe, Lu Qingru was the person who treated her the best. Especially after she became Shinyueji, she knew what Lu Qingru had done for her. In the past, she only knew that Lu Qingru doted on her, but she never thought that Lu Qingru would go to such lengths for her. I have something to tell you. Hearing this, Lu Qingru suddenly got up from her embrace. Qin, wait for me first. I'll be done very soon, very soon. Without waiting for Shinyueji's response, she turned around and ran into the inner hall. Her flustered appearance made Shinyueji worried. Without much thought, he followed them in. The water in the bathtub was already piercingly cold. But the woman standing at the edge of the bathtub didn't feel the coldness of the water at all. She didn't even take off her clothes and jumped in. She tore off the clothes on her body and started to wash her body vigorously. Not long after, her delicate skin was broken, and the ambiguous marks on it were also scraped away piece by piece by her sharp nails. The ambiguous skin was peeled off, and it was such a shocking scene. It made Shinyueji's heart almost suffocate. Chapter 505. She couldn't stand it anymore and jumped into the bath. The cold water made her shiver, but she didn't feel it at all. She swam towards the woman who was still washing her body. You're crazy. She rushed over and stopped the woman's crazy actions. Lu Qingru saw her coming down, and her red and swollen eyes were filled with heartache. Qin, go up first. The water is cold, wait for me, I'll be done soon. I'm too dirty, wait for me to wash myself clean. Countless ambiguous skin bags were cut by her sharp nails, and she peeled them off piece by piece. It was cruel and bloody. Soon, the clean bath was filled with the smell of blood, and blood was dripping everywhere. The clear bath was dyed red with blood, and the pungent smell of her body was all over the place. Shinyueji's nose turned sour, and she hugged her to stop her crazy actions. It's not dirty, it's really not dirty, listen to me, okay? Don't punish and torture yourself like this, it's really not dirty, I don't despise you, I will never despise you. Listen to me, don't do such stupid things in the future, and cut off all ties with those people of the pugilistic world, okay? I have the Shin family to protect me now. I can protect myself, and even you, I can protect you all. I don't need you to take the risk to stand out and protect me. Chin, it's really dirty, those people. No, it's not dirty. Shin Yueji's eyes were red, and she helped her out of the bath. The skin on her body was broken, revealing the scarlet flesh underneath, and the blood flowed even more freely after it left the water. She saw that she was suffocating. She found something and quickly applied medicine to stop the bleeding. During this time, the woman didn't cry out in pain, not even a sound of gasping. She just looked down at her, stopped the bleeding, and felt heartache for herself. She was actually still smiling foolishly. It's like a dream, Chin. In the dream, I dreamed of you many times, and I wanted to sleep in the dream forever, and never wake up, so that you wouldn't leave me. Tell me, is it a dream now? In the dream, you saw my past appearance, and now, I am Shin Yueji. Do you think it's still a dream? It took a long time to stop all the wounds on her body. Shin Yueji sat beside her and looked at her pale face. Don't be so silly in the future. I'm not worth it, understand? No. Lu Qingru shook her head. If you're not worth it, then who is? Very quickly, she chuckled. No wonder Mo Wushang's feelings for you changed. Qin, does he know that you're her? Lu Qingru's words startled Shin Yueji and she shook her head. I don't know. You don't know. Lu Qingru looked at her and said, although I was in the palace, I still heard some of the things that happened between Shin Yueji and Mo Wushang. Previously, Mo Wushang hated her to death and wished that he could kill her so that he could have peace. Why did her temperament suddenly change so much and become so attentive to you? Shin Yueji did have some doubts before, but she quickly suppressed it. After all, she had changed her soul and placed it in the body of the eldest daughter of the Shin family. This matter was too unimaginable, and even she had spent a lot of effort just now. She really couldn't stand Lu Qingru making such a mistake for her, so she told her all this. Obviously, Lu Qingru still had some doubts in her heart until now. Chapter 506. However, her words reminded her of something. She couldn't forget the first time she met Mo Wushang in the Imperial Garden. At that time, she just provoked him with a few words and he wanted to kill her. Later, he suddenly appeared in her bedroom. She suddenly thought of something. After he saw himself wake up, especially after seeing him, that panic-stricken look. It was as if her heart was palpitating, instinctively afraid, worried about something. At that time, Shin Yueji's thoughts were all on that, so she naturally ignored the man's reaction. Now that she thought about it, it seemed that since then, Mo Wushang treated her exceptionally well, especially indulged her, let her do whatever she wanted. A bad premonition overflowed in his mind. Could it be, Mo Wushang already knew that she was Gu Yueqin? That's why he was so good to her. Otherwise, Shin Yueji really couldn't think of a reason why he suddenly treated her so well. She had suspected it before and was on guard against him for a long time. If she had known that he already knew her identity and had such a guess, she wouldn't have taken so long to figure it out. But, she clearly didn't tell anyone, even Lu Qingru. She just told her. How did Mo Wushang know that the previous Shin Yueji was dead? And she was the rebirth of Gu Yueqin. Do you think Mo Wushang already knew my identity? He should know, otherwise, he wouldn't suddenly be so good to you. For some reason, Lu Qingru's face darkened. She grabbed Shin Yueji's hand and said, Qin, do you blame me for not recognizing you just now? Shin Yueji shook her head and said, what nonsense are you talking about? It's an incredible thing to be reborn into another woman's body, not to mention that I'm already dead. But Mo Wushang recognized her earlier than she did. She thought that her feelings for her were not much worse than that man's. Why could he recognize her, but she couldn't? He even did so many things to hurt her secretly. If Mo Wushang hadn't sent people to protect her, I'm afraid, her Qin had long been. Suddenly, she remembered that she saw her on the bed with Feng Juqing today. This time, she was even a little afraid to look up at her. Seeing her hesitation, Shen Yueji held her hand and said, I don't have any feelings for him now. You don't have to sacrifice so much for me in the future. Now that I'm back, you don't have to sacrifice yourself just to avenge me. I have my own plans. I'll make them pay double for what they owe me. Qin, I didn't protect you well in the past. It was my incompetence that caused you to suffer so much. I could only watch from afar, but I couldn't do anything. But it's different now. I have enough power to protect you. I won't let you suffer even the slightest bit of harm. Shen Yueji shook her head. What I hope for the most right now is for you to cut ties with those people from the pugilistic world. I hope that you can return to your innocent and unaffected self. You've done enough for me. It's enough. Then, what about Wu Jiaoyi? I want to help you. If it weren't for you, I would have also caused some trouble in the back palace. It just so happened that you did it first. That was also why she didn't do anything in the end. She just watched the matter ferment. Chapter 507. Tell me, how many Jianghu people have you made friends with? I know all the famous evil sects and gangs in Jianghu. Lu Qingrou's words shocked Shen Yueji. How does it feel? Very quickly, she smiled carelessly. There are also many righteous sections. Now I finally know that those righteous sects that pretend to be righteous sects are actually filthy in their bones. Compared to those so-called evil sects and crooked sects, they are so much worse. The two-headed monster is from the western region. How did you get in touch with them? Oh, them. It was given to me by a woman. Woman? That's right. Even these Jianghu people were introduced to me by her. Otherwise, in such a short time, how could I make friends with so many so-called Jianghu people in the harem? These Jianghu people come from all over the world. I don't know anyone in the harem. Unless it was planned in advance before entering the palace. But Qin, you know that before entering the palace, there was only us. I never knew anyone. Then, who is the woman you know? How did you know her? Is it inconvenient to answer? Shen Yueji's words made Lu Qingru panic instantly. She shook her head fiercely. No, Qin, you know that I have always been unreserved towards you. Why would I hide anything from you? It's just that I don't know that woman. When you were executed by Feng Juqing, I was disheartened and couldn't beg him. I had planned to go with you after you died. It was this woman who suddenly appeared. She came to the palace to find you. Lu Qingru nodded. Yes, she came to the palace to find me. At that time, I didn't know who she was. She suddenly appeared in Huayang Palace. She said she was willing to help me. Help me take revenge. Why? Reason, Lu Qingru hesitated. How could there be such a good thing in this world? She would enter the palace to help you without asking for anything in return. What good would it do her? Tell me honestly. What did you promise her? It's nothing. If I had known that my death would cause you to become like this, I would not have known you from the start. That way, you would still be alive and well, and would not have ended up like this because of me. But I have never regretted it. Qin, I don't regret anything I've done for you. Do you know what I've been doing when you weren't around? Don't leave me again, okay? As long as you don't leave me, I'll do anything you want me to do. If you don't like those men, from today onwards, I'll cut all ties with them. Qin, as long as you let me stay by your side, even if I have to look at you from afar. Alright, then tell me, what did you promise that woman? Who is that woman? I don't know what that woman looks like. Every time she sees me, she's wearing a black veil, but her martial arts are very strong, and she can come and go as she pleases in the harem. Even the well-trained secret guards in the palace are no match for her. She said that she will help me take revenge. 1 year. 1 year later. She asked me to leave with her. Leave with her. That's simple. Yes, she said that my body structure is different from ordinary people, and is very suitable for martial arts. She asked me to follow her, learn martial arts from her, and be her person. Chapter 508. Xin, believe me, I really didn't promise her anything. If it was some excessive condition, I definitely wouldn't have agreed. At that time, I felt that the condition was very tempting, so using her own body to let those men help her, what kind of tempting condition was that? That woman, other than finding a man for her, was clearly harming her. But Shin Yueji couldn't say anything, because the culprit who harmed her was standing right in front of her. Promise me, no matter what happens, you have to cut off contact with that woman. From now on, don't have any contact with her. Almost without any hesitation, Lu Qingru nodded. Okay, Xin, I'll listen to you. If you want me to cut off contact with her, I'll cut off contact with her. Don't be angry. I'm not angry. Shin Yueji looked at her. Although the bleeding on her body had stopped, her snow-white body was covered with wounds. It was a ghastly sight. She hugged Lu Qingru with heartache. Seeing you like this, I'm wondering what I did to deserve you to make such a sacrifice. I took so long to tell you that I'm Guiyuqin, do you blame me? No, I know, Xin, must have her own reasons for taking so long to tell me. I'm just glad that Imo Wushang stopped me. Otherwise, I would have hurt you with my own hands. That way, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. It had been so long that Shin Yueji had forgotten what Lu Qingru was like in the past. In short, she knew that she wouldn't be like this, begging humbly. She used to be a proud daughter of the heavens. If the daughter of the Shin family was the pearl in the palm of General Shin's hand, then she, Lu Qingru, was the treasure in the mouth of the Lu couple. I know you want to help me. Don't worry, I'll definitely have use for you. Now, take care of your injuries first. When you're almost recovered, no matter what you do in the future, I'll discuss with you, okay? Xin, chase Wu Jiaoyi out of the Phoenix Perch Palace, don't let her stay with you. Faced with her sudden words, Shin Yueji looked at her in confusion. Why? Her internal organs have long been swallowed by mites. A day has passed, she's no longer herself. The mites are poisonous, anyone who comes into contact with them will end up like Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu. At the mention of Xiaoyu, Shin Yueji seemed to think of something. Tell me, what did you do to Xiaoyu? How could she come back to life after death? Also, who amputated her limbs? Is it the man in black who came out of your Huayong palace? I don't know that man either. That man is the same as that woman. They both cover their faces, and he doesn't seem to have entered the palace for me, but for something else. Something else? Are you referring to the emperor? Yes. In this 1 month, although I don't know why that person helped me, I'm sure that she did it for Feng Zhiqing. Also, they're just using me because they're bored, that's why they want to help me. Qin, believe me, she won't do anything to me. Feng Zhiqing, you hypocrite. Only now did I realize that there were so many people who wanted him dead. Qin, Her hand was grabbed by Lu Qingru. She looked at the woman's face that was filled with hope and sincerity. This time, you won't side with that man anymore, right? Chapter 509. Probing, with a hopeful look. Shin Yueji's heart skipped a beat and she shook her head, no. Lu Qingru then revealed a smile. That man is not worthy of your trust, you finally got over it. From now on, I will stand by your side. If you need any help, just say it, I will definitely help you. After returning from Huayang Palace, Shin Yueji was in a daze. She stood outside Fengqi Palace but was not in a hurry to enter. Your Highness, what did you say to concubine Ro? This servant thinks that her change is too fast. Earlier, she looked like she wanted you dead. Just now, when you left Huayang Palace, she actually personally ran out to see you off. Even after your figure disappeared, she was still looking at you. Nothing, is Wu Jiaoyi still here? Yes, she is. This servant specially sent food to her. Other than that, she doesn't see anyone. She is very honest and doesn't look like someone who plays tricks. Let her go later. Let her go. Shuangxi thought she heard wrong and asked again uncertainly, Your Highness, didn't you say you would take her in? Why did you let her go? Anyway, she can't stay any longer. But, look at her, she definitely won't dare to return to her own palace. In this harem, other than her own palace and your Highness's, I'm afraid, let her be. Your Highness. Your Highness, this servant is bold, but just now in Huayang Palace, what did concubine Rote say to you? From Huayang Palace back, your Highness has been restless all the way. This servant called you a few times but didn't see your Highness respond to this servant. Shuangxi, a person can die for you, even abandoning her own family, only thinking about you, only hoping that you can be well. This person, what does she want? Shuangxi hesitated and looked at her. Your Highness, are you talking about a man or a woman? Man or woman? She was stunned and looked back at her. What's the difference between a man and a woman? If it's a man, then isn't it normal to treat his beloved like this? Isn't young Master Shengguan a good example? What about women? Women, double happiness kept him in suspense and thought about it seriously. If it's about women, I'm not very clear about it. Women for women. Is this friendship? But friendship shouldn't be sacrificed to this extent, right? For the sake of her friend, she would even disregard her own family. What benefits did the person you mentioned give this woman? Why would she be so hell-bent on sacrificing herself for her? No. Your Highness, who exactly are you talking about? Double happiness was completely dumbfounded. I didn't say who it was. I was just curious and wanted to ask. Your Highness, this servant wants to tell you something. Actually, it's not impossible, it's very possible. Ah, ghost. Help. Help. A sharp and fearful scream came from the side hall. Then, Shin Yueji saw a palace maid stumbling out from the inside. Double happiness was the first to recognize the palace maid. Wasn't that the maidservant who brought food to Wu Jiaoyi? She walked forward and helped the palace maid who had fallen on the ground up. The little palace maid was so scared that her hands were fluttering wildly. Double happiness reacted quickly and pressed her hands down, staring at her. Look clearly, it's a clear day. Where did the ghost come from? As soon as the little palace maid saw double happiness, she was so scared that she immediately cried out, There's a ghost, there's really a ghost, there's really a ghost. Chapter 510. Shuangxi scolded her sternly, How dare you? How dare you make such a ruckus in front of Her Highness? You must be tired of living. The little palace maid looked at Shin Yueji behind her helplessly and crawled towards her. Your Highness, Imperial concubine, there's really a ghost. I saw it, I really saw it. It's inside, her face is rotten, and her body, the maid didn't dare to recall. Especially when she thought of the horrifying scene, she trembled in fear. She couldn't even speak clearly. I told you to bring food to Wujiaoyi. Where is it? This servant has already sent the food. Yes. Yes, she didn't know what was going on. Previously, when she brought food, Wujiaoyi would personally receive it with a smile. She didn't know what happened just now. She shouted outside for a long time, but Wujiaoyi didn't respond. She had to go in by herself. The side hall was quiet. There wasn't even a shadow. She shouted and looked around but didn't see Wujiaoyi. Then, on the bed, she saw a brocade quilt wrapped high. There was a strange sound coming from inside. She thought Wujiaoyi wasn't feeling well, so she went to check without thinking. Who knew? Who knew? The maid's tears flowed even harder. Her Highness, everything I said is true. It's really a ghost. If you don't believe me, you can go take a look. I'm not lying. All right, then I'll go take a look myself. I want to see if there's a ghost inside like you said. Shuangxi glared at her coldly. Her Highness, please wait outside for a moment. I'll go in and verify it. No need. Shen Yueji lightly said. She glanced at the crying maid kneeling on the ground. Pass down my orders. Strictly guard the side chamber. No one is allowed to enter, and no one is allowed to leave. Her Highness. Then send someone to the imperial study to inform the emperor. Although she didn't understand her intention, Shuangxi still answered respectfully, yes, Her Highness. I'll do it now. After Shuangxi left, Shen Yueji looked at the trembling maid. Don't be afraid. That person is Wu Jiaoyi, not a ghost. Wu Jiaoyi. Hearing Shen Yueji's words, the little palace maid was even more afraid. In the entire side chamber, there was only Wu Jiaoyi. No other maidservants entered, and you were the only one. Since you didn't see Wu Jiaoyi in the side chamber, and there was only a rotten corpse, who else do you think it could be if not Wu Jiaoyi? The little palace maid thought about it seriously and felt even more afraid. Even her body couldn't help but tremble. Your Highness, is it really Wu Jiaoyi? She was shocked and scared, her face full of tears. Wu Jiaoyi. How did Wu Jiaoyi become like this? Did Wu Jiaoyi bump into you when you went in? No. When I lifted the quilt, I saw a rotten corpse lying on it. I was so frightened that I ran out in panic. That. Wu Jiaoyi didn't even have time to react before I ran away. That's good. You may leave. Yes, thank you, Your Highness. The little palace maid crawled up from the ground in fear. After taking 2 steps, she turned around and said, Your Highness, that Wu Jiaoyi is too scary. You must be careful. The corner of Shen Yueji's mouth curled up slightly. She couldn't help but look at the delicate and pretty little palace maid. Her panicked and scared expression revealed a trace of worry. Don't worry. She can't hurt me. Chapter 5:11. Don't interfere in Lu Qingrou's matters. Stepping into the main hall, the man's familiar voice rang in her ears. When Shen Yueji regained her senses, she was already in the man's arms. Looking at the man's handsome face, she couldn't help but recall the words Lu Qingrou said to her in Huayang Palace. She was wondering why the man who hated her so much in the beginning would suddenly change his temperament and treat her so well. It turned out that he had long known her identity. To think that she was still on her guard against him. What's wrong? Perhaps it was because the woman in his arms was too well behaved that Imo Wushang felt a little uncomfortable. He pulled Shin Yueji into his arms and sat her on his lap. Then, he straightened her small face and looked into her eyes. What are you doing here? To see you. See me. What's there to see? Didn't Hong Fui say that she would take you away from here and return to the northern underworld? You know that as long as you are here, I won't leave. Slapping his big hand away, Shin Yueji sneered, Wu Jiaoyi is in trouble in my Feng Qi palace. I have ordered Shuangxi to inform the emperor. Soon, the emperor will come. Since the regent has seen her, you should leave quickly. I don't want the emperor to see me and the regent pulling each other when he comes. Seeing that the man didn't speak, Shin Yueji became angry. He hid it from her for so long, but she didn't get angry, and he was the first to make things difficult for her. Mo Wushang, you promised me before that you would never lie to me. Do you still keep your words? Of course. Good, then tell me, what is your relationship with the Emperor of the Northern Underworld? Seeing that the man's eyes dimmed, she moved her lips but didn't say a word. Okay, I won't argue with you about this. Then tell me, why did you suddenly treat me so well when you used to hate me so much? What are you hiding from me? You said you wouldn't lie to me, but you've been lying to me all this time. How can I believe you when you're like this? Struggling to get up from his arms, Shin Yueji didn't even look at him. You should leave. Since you have something to deal with in the northern underworld, why are you still here? However, before she could enter the inner hall, her waist was held tightly by the man from behind. I didn't want you to think too much, so I didn't tell you this. His fair chin pressed on her shoulder, not allowing her to struggle. If you don't like it, then I will never go back. No matter what my identity is, I will only be the one you like, okay? As lowly as he was, he used a somewhat pleading tone, don't drive me away. You know what I've always wanted. Did you already know that I was Guiwachin? The man did not hesitate and nodded. Yes. Then why don't you just say it out loud? I was afraid that you would hate me. Why do you think so? All along, you didn't like me. Yes, all along, her eyes only followed Feng Jiuqing. Mo Wushang's appearance, even though she knew that he appeared in front of her for her sake, she still couldn't be bothered to look at him. He was not a person who was good at talking. Every time he appeared, his eyes were cold and his face was cold. Chapter 5:12. Especially when he looked at her, it made her feel like she was a prey that was being sized up by him. That was why she was so resistant to him. Compared to Feng Jiuqing, who gave her infinite gentleness and love, he was really lacking. In addition, at that time, she only had Feng Jiuqing in her heart, so she naturally did not care about him. She was more and more disgusted with his pestering. She was afraid that his appearance would cause Feng Jiuqing to misunderstand. But in the end, she could not deny that she hated him until the moment of her death. If you were afraid that I would hate you, you should never appear in front of me again. It's just a change of appearance. You are still by my side. Aren't you afraid that I will still hate you? No, you will only use me. The man's thin lips curved slightly, and he took her into his arms again. Will use me. If I really use you and want you to die, will you be willing? Yes, as long as wants me to do it, I will do it. His thin lips touched the girl's forehead. Even if it's death, as long as is happy. Mo Wushang, what do you like about me? You always pester me like this, when I'm alive, when I'm dead. In the past, she still suspected that the reason why Mo Wushang liked her so much was because of Feng Jiuqing. Because Feng Jiuqing loved her, he tried his best to get in touch with her. She thought that she was Feng Jiuqing's weakness, and Mo Wushang must have thought so too. As long as he had her, he could deal with Feng Jiuqing. But after her death, Feng Zhiqing's heartlessness towards her made her realize that everything was wishful thinking on her part. When she was Shen Yueji, Mo Wuxiang was still good to her. She began to suspect that it was because of Shen He's relationship with the Shen family. But his power was above the Shen family. Even if he wanted to please her, it should be the Shen family who would please him. There was no need for him to lower his status to please Shen He. This reminded her of the first time she met Mo Wuxiang. It seemed that from the first time they met, he seemed to care about her. At that time, he was already the regent of the Feng country. He was surrounded by people wherever he went. She, on the other hand, was still the unfavored daughter of the Gu family. From the first moment they met, she could feel that his gaze was glued to her body. That emotionless gaze, like that of a prey sizing him up, made her feel repulsed from the bottom of her heart. Mo Wuxiang, tell me the truth. Don't lie to me. Tell me, did you know me before? Yes. Really? When? The man lowered his eyes to look at her, as if recalling something worth recalling. You were kind enough to release a captured rabbit, but it bit you instead. You were so angry that you roasted it and ate it. The man's words made Shen Yueji instantly dumbfounded. This matter had happened so long ago that if he didn't mention it, he would have forgotten about it. How old was she then? At most, she was 6 or 7 years old. She was slapped by Murong Yun again and came out alone to relax. Then she saw a little rabbit in a cage, dying. It looked very pitiful. Out of kindness, she released it. Who knew that the rabbit didn't know how to be grateful? Instead, it bit her hand. Chapter 513. At that time, her hand was covered with sores. It was so painful and she was bitten so hard. She was so angry that she threw the dying rabbit to the ground, killing it. And then, Shen Yueji recalled seriously. She couldn't let the rabbit die in vain. She found a river, plucked the rabbit's fur and roasted it. It was fragrant. Just the smell alone made her appetite increase. The grievances she suffered in the Prime Minister's residence disappeared. And then, before Shen Yueji could eat the roasted rabbit meat, it was snatched away in front of her by a fair and pretty hand. She raised her head and saw a young and handsome face. At such a young age, he had a maturity that did not belong to him. Also, his expensive clothes made people think that this person's identity was definitely that of a member of the royal family. How could an ordinary commoner wear such good materials? Even the young masters of her family might not be able to wear such high-quality materials. But, in the wilderness, there was no one. Where did this young master in front of her come from? His face was pale and there was a weakness that didn't match his gorgeous appearance. Then, for some reason, Shen Yueji watched him eat all the rabbit meat that she had roasted with great difficulty. After eating, he died. He didn't die, but he vomited blood. He vomited so much blood that it covered her face. And this damned young master fainted after vomiting blood. At that time, Shen Yueji was annoyed. But when she thought about it, he was a human life. Looking at his clothes, he didn't look like an ordinary person. If she didn't help him, it would be easy to get into trouble. So, she spent a lot of effort and pulled him into a small cave. Shen Yueji couldn't remember the rest clearly. When he opened his eyes weakly, she went back early because she had been out for some time. Later on, whether this person was dead or alive, in the wilderness, if a wild beast jumped out and ate him, he might not be able to struggle. In short, it was up to fate. Thinking up to this point, Shen Yueji looked at him a little tentatively. Mo Wuxiang, could it be that you're the young master I saved many years ago? Things like fate sometimes came so inexplicably. It was already in front of you, but you didn't realize it at all. She believed that if she didn't ask him today, perhaps he wouldn't tell her in this life, and then they would be wrong forever. In her heart, she would still think that he had another purpose for getting close to her. Shin Yueji didn't expect that there was such a relationship between her and Mo Wushang. But because of this, Shin Yueji couldn't understand. She pinched the man's handsome face. Because I saved your life before, you keep pestering me. The man laughed and held her hand. You almost killed me. Under the girl's gaze, the man had no choice but to finish the rest of his words. The 7 or 8-year-old girl didn't know medicine. He remembered clearly that there were many wounds on his body. She only knew to wrap all his wounds with cloth, but she didn't know to clean them. The infected wounds and the sharp weapons inside were still there. When he woke up from the coma, his whole body was in pain, and there was no part of his body that was intact. Chapter 5:14. If Ji Chu hadn't arrived in time and bandaged his wound again, he would have died. Mo Wushang wondered if he would have died in her hands. No, I didn't. I only left after I bandaged your wound. I saw with my own eyes that your wound was no longer bleeding. Her clothes were not good at all. In order to bandage his wound, her clothes were torn. Murong Yun and the others would punish her when she returned. Especially Gu Yueyin, who claimed that she was fooling around with other men. She didn't bother to explain. Even if Murong Yun knew about her innocence, she would believe Gu Yueyin's words and punish herself instead. Apart from being flogged and slapped, she had to wash more clothes and wash the dishes in the kitchen. She didn't even have a chance to catch her breath. As soon as she stopped, the nanny holding the rattan behind her would unceremoniously hit her with the rattan. Mo Wushang, when I left you there alone, there wouldn't really be a wild beast that wanted to eat you, right? No beast. But when Ji was treating my wound, the man wrapped his arms around her waist and said helplessly, she didn't know how to remove the residue from my body. When Ji Chu found me, I was already on my last breath. Shin Yueji was speechless. Mo Wushang, tell me the truth. Did you fall in love with me since then? But after saying that, Shin Yueji fell into deep thought. He wasn't much older than her, right? How old was she then? How could she understand the relationship between a man and a woman at such a young age? Unless he hated her. As if she had seen through his thoughts, the man looked away awkwardly. I was angry with you for a while. But then, he had wanted Ji Chu to find out her identity and bring this damned girl to his side so that he could punish her. He wanted to know whether she was trying to hurt him or save him. But as he grew up and found out that this woman was the eldest daughter of the Gu family, he gradually let go of that thought. Especially when he saw what happened to her in the Prime Minister's mansion. At first, he felt a little relieved. But later, he started to think that he wouldn't allow anyone to bully someone he liked. So when Gu Yueyin had schemed against her many times and used men to destroy her innocence, he had secretly ordered Ji Chu to get rid of her. Even when he had to leave Feng country and return to the northern underworld, her every move in the Prime Minister's manor was within his control, including what those people punished her to do and how many times they hit her. Maybe because he was too young at that time, he didn't care much about relationships. He only knew that Gu Yueqin was different from the women he knew, but he didn't want to protect her too much. When Ji Chu told him about what had happened to her, he was indifferent and didn't have much of a reaction. He even felt that her cowardly and vulnerable appearance was completely different from her fierce appearance when she was bandaging his wound. Then, it grew bigger. When Imperial Mother was preparing for his marriage, he didn't have a woman he liked, so he thought of her. If it was said that following her was just a hobby at the beginning, then it had become a habit. Later on, he was constantly rejected by her. His pride had long been ground down to nothing. Even his habits had become an indispensable part of his life. Chapter 5:15. He didn't know when he fell in love with Gu Yuqin and when he felt that she was the only one he could have. Mo Wushang only knew that Gu Yuqin's position in his heart was higher than anything else. Even the throne couldn't compare to her. Perhaps she had left a mark in his heart from the first time he saw her. It was just that it wasn't obvious and he could ignore it at will. After getting along with her, he knew that the reason why he stayed in Feng country for so long was because of her. Sometimes, habit was a very scary thing. All these years, he was used to following behind her. He was used to her ignoring him and treating him coldly. He was even used to her verbally insulting him and her face flushed red with anger, but there was nothing he could do. He was used to being nice to her and not needing anything in return. Then why didn't you tell me earlier that you were the young master I saved? You made me think that you were pestering me to deal with Feng Juqing. How would she dare to be nice to such a man? She knew that he was using her. If she didn't have this misunderstanding from the beginning, would things have ended differently? After all, she knew Mo Wushang earlier than she knew Feng Juqing. But this guy appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Who would know that the young master she saved was the regent of Feng country and the emperor of the North Underworld? No, she thought of how he looked at her coldly when she died in her previous life. Shen Yueji punched him in the chest again. Tell me honestly, when we were in the Diaoyang Palace, there was actually nothing between us. Why didn't you explain when you knew you were being schemed against? Why did you let me be framed? He didn't even appear when she was executed. Although her previous doubts were solved, this, whether it was Shen Yueji's suspicion or something else, would always be a knot in her heart if she couldn't get Mo Wushang's confirmation. I'm sorry. This is out of my expectation. Originally, I promised him that I would destroy a force for him in exchange for you. As for why you left without saying a word that day, Mo Wushang's face turned ugly. I feel bad. You only have him in your heart and I have no place at all. What did you promise him? Feng Juqing also knew that Gu Yueyin schemed against me, right? Yes. I gave him a condition. I'll help him destroy the forces of the Marquis of the West in exchange for you. So, during that time, you went to the West? Yes. It was only after he returned that he found out that Feng Juqing had not fulfilled his promise to him. At that time, he wanted to lead the army to destroy the Feng nation. If they rashly attacked the Feng nation, both sides would suffer great losses, and the other nation would gain the upper hand. The Feng country and the North Sea were already on par. He hated himself for hurting her because of a moment of anger. He was depressed all day long. His mother was worried that he would continue to be depressed, so she came to the Feng kingdom personally. At that time, she had said a lot of things to him. Undoubtedly, she was trying to persuade him to let go of his romantic feelings and focus on national affairs. Later on, when he said that he wouldn't move, he could only say that if he wanted to avenge her, if he didn't pull himself together, how could he kill Feng Juqing? Shen Yueji couldn't help but shed tears again when he finally confirmed what happened in her previous life. He opened his mouth and bit him fiercely. Mo Wushang, you bastard. Chapter 5:16. Do you know what happened to me after you turned around and left? Nothing happened to you, and what happened to me? She burst into tears. You even said that you liked me. Feng Juqing is the queen of a country and the regent. Do you really think that he will let me go? I am sorry. It is all my fault. I swear that I will not do it again. I will not leave even if chases me away. Please forgive me, okay? How did you recognize me? Previously, when you saw me, you wanted nothing more than to kill me. Yet, you suddenly recognized me. How did you manage to do something that even Feng Juqing failed to do? In her heart, she and Feng Juqing had been husband and wife for 9 years. No matter what, they slept in the same bed. If Feng Zhiqing did not recognize her, it was impossible for Mo Wuxiang to recognize her in such a short time. The man held her hand and chuckled. The feeling that Ji gave me is not wrong. What feeling? She saw the man took her hand and put it on his chest. Shen Yueji felt the man's hot and beating heart. She was stunned for a moment. No one in this world can replace the feeling that Ji gave me. Shen Yueji was speechless. So, this man was saying sweet nothings to her again. Shen Yueji awkwardly withdrew her hand from his chest. She blushed and did not dare to look at him. Instead, she quickly changed the topic. Before you came, Hong Fui went to the palace to see me once. She did not see any extra emotion on the man's face. In short, whether he knew or not, there would not be much expression on his face. Shen Yueji paused for a moment. Did something happen to you? She saw the man's dark eyes flashing. Shen Yueji grabbed his hand. If there is something, you can go back. I can handle it here, and, she looked at the man again. When I went to Huayang Palace just now, I told Ro that I am Gu Yuqin. You don't have to secretly prevent her from hurting me. After she knows my identity, she will not hurt me. She felt the man's strength on her body. There was a moment of tightening, and then she looked at his strange face. Shen Yueji was confused. What's wrong? Why did you tell her all this? Everything she did was for me. Previously in the Imperial Garden, I wanted to tell her my identity, but my experience was too unimaginable. I was afraid that she wouldn't believe me, so I hid it from her. It's different now. She looked at the man in front of her. Now that she knows my identity, she will only help me protect me. Why would she harm me? The strange look in the man's eyes flashed so quickly that even Shen Yueji didn't notice it. I won't go back. I just want to stay here to accompany you. The last time she left, he almost lost her. The lingering fear in his heart was still vivid in his mind. He was afraid that the previous incident would repeat itself. If that really happened, she knew what he was worried about. Shen Yueji glared at him fiercely. At that time, I was the daughter of the Gu family who was despised by everyone. Everyone in the Gu family wanted me dead. But now it is different. My current identity is the eldest young miss of the Shen family, the apple of old General Shen's eye. Shen he has outstanding military achievements in the imperial court, and he is very prestigious. Not to mention the Gu family, even the emperor has to care about his reputation. Even if I do something wrong, Feng Zhiqing can't touch me. Besides, I'm still injured, so I can't do much. I'll be fine while you're away from the Feng nation. Chapter 5:17. There's no need to say more. I won't leave. Mo Wuxiang. Shen Yueji's face turned cold. She looked at the man's eyes. Are you trying to piss me off? The man was also tough. I love you so much. Why should I piss you off? You, Hong Fui said that every move of the North Underworld is under Feng Zhiqing's eyes. I'm afraid that Feng Zhiqing has already known that you are not in the North Underworld. If he takes this opportunity to do something to the North Underworld, you will be the one to suffer. It's just a throne. If he wants it, the whole North Underworld will be his, as long as I am alone. Without the throne, do you think your position as the regent can be stable when his power grows day by day? Shen Yueji stared at him fiercely. I'm used to living a luxurious life. Not to mention that you can't be the emperor of the North Underworld, a mere title of regent princess can't satisfy me. Seeing the man's dark eyes brighten a little. Shen Yueji's words were stuck in her throat. Her little face was also bright red. Living a good and comfortable life. Who wants to roam the world and drink the northwest wind with you? The man's Adam's apple moved. He understood the meaning of her words. Even his eyes twinkled a lot when he looked at her. He carefully held Shinyueji in his arms and hugged her tightly. At this moment, his heart was filled because of her words. It was so full that it almost overflowed. Could he understand that in the future, she would be the queen of the North Underworld, hand in hand with him, overlooking the beautiful rivers and mountains of the North Underworld? If wants it, I will snatch it for you. That's why you should return to the Northern Underworld first. I've told you before that if you're worried about my safety, you can leave Ji-Chu behind to protect me in secret. Ji-Chu is your trusted guard, and you know how capable he is. Now I not only have the Shen family behind me, but also Even Feng Juqing is not willing to hurt me now. What are you worried about? It's not that I'm worried. I just don't want to leave you. In the future. Mo Wushang looked down at her. In the future, when you get your revenge, are you willing to go to the North Underworld with me? Of course not. Marrying to a faraway place would not end well. Let's not talk about how a proud daughter like me might not be able to acclimatize to your Northern Underworld. What if I can't get along with your mother? Look at me now, do I look like the kind of person who would give in? However, you can marry into my family. When Dark North needs you, I can rush over with you. Once we're done with the matters there, we can come back. Oh right, Mo Wushang, are you the only son your mother has? The man held her hand and gently kissed it, and Imperial Father disbanded the harem for Imperial Mother. When Imperial Mother gave birth to me, she almost lost her life, so from then on, Imperial Father did not allow Imperial Mother to get pregnant again. What about your father? The man's eyes flickered. Father has always been in poor health. He passed away when I was very young. Oh. So Mo Wushang was brought up by Empress Dowager Dark North. Then why are you in Feng country? Imperial Mother brought me up alone. It was hard to guarantee that there were no disobedient officials in the court who coveted the North Underworld. To ensure my safety, Imperial Mother ordered her confidant to send me out of the North Underworld that very night. Who knew that I would be assassinated by men in black on the way? At that time, more than half of the guards were lost. I was seriously injured when I fought with them. Chapter 518. I see. What's wrong? The man looked at her seriously. You don't have to worry, I won't let anyone bully you, not even Mother. I believe you. Shinyueji smiled and touched the man's handsome face. I know, you love me the most. Oh right. Thinking of something, Shinyueji's face darkened. Mo Wushang, before you leave, help me investigate something secretly. What is it? Today in Huayang Palace, I talked a lot with concubine Ro and asked her how she managed to make friends with so many people in such a short time. She told me that it was a masked woman who introduced them to her. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for all these famous people in Jianghu to come one after another in just over a month's time. A masked woman. Yes, the two-headed monster in the western region was also introduced to her by that woman. I asked her, what does that woman look like? She said that she had never seen her real face, not even her name. Every time she entered the palace, she would come to see her with a veil. Moreover, her martial arts are very strong, even the secret guards in the palace are not her match. I suspect that this woman has a motive. There are so many women in the palace, but she chose Lu Qingru. But Ro deliberately hid it from me. After knowing her for so long, if she lied to her, Shinyueji would be able to see through her expression and behavior. Although she had hidden it perfectly, she was still able to see through it. It could be said that in front of her, her lies would always have flaws. Also, did Ji Chu tell you about Wu Jiaoyi today? Is Wu Jiaoyi still in your palace? Yes. Mo Wushang, did you lose your memory? But Ro Er's warning seems to be a bit late, because Wu Jiaoyi's mites are acting up now. At this time, the Emperor will probably come soon. You should leave quickly, don't let him find you here. I have to go back to Dark North. As expected, Shen Yueji nodded. Yes, I'll wait for you here. You have to deal with Biming's matter as soon as possible. The man looked at her for a long time. His lips moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. Seeing his hesitation, Shen Yueji stepped forward. What's wrong? Still worried about me? Take good care of yourself. He held her in his arms and felt her presence. The previous incident was still vivid in his mind, as if it had become a cliff in his heart that he could never cross. Every time he woke up in the middle of the night, even if he knew that she was still by his side and alive, he was still afraid that the scene would repeat itself and he would really lose her forever. He couldn't imagine what he would do if he really lost her one day. Mo Wushang, this time, I really intend to accept you and be with you. So, don't disappoint me. You know, I've already been deceived once, and I gave everything. I thought I met a good man, and for him, I gave everything, but the end was so unbearable. Even if I accept you now, I dare not give my heart completely. Give me time, I will not let you wait and pay for nothing, but you have to promise me, never betray me, never lie to me. Chapter 5:19. If you hate me one day, please tell me in advance, I will leave. I won't. The man hugged her tightly. In this life, I will not let you leave me. Don't think too much, all my feelings for you are true. I will not betray you, and I will not deceive you. In response to him, the girl took the initiative to put her arms around his neck and gave him a sweet kiss. The long-lost lingering and the familiar fragrance of her body could always numb his senses. The man was stunned for a moment, and then he reacted with joy, holding her waist and deepening the lingering kiss. After the kiss, Shen Yueji's little face turned red, and she panted heavily. She pushed him hard. Go, it will be too late if you don't go now. The man kissed her forehead again, and then turned to leave. Looking at his back as he left, Shen Yueji touched her slightly swollen lips and couldn't help but laugh out loud. When she was with Mo Wushang in the past, even if he was very good to her, she always felt that something was missing. But now it was different, she could let go of all the doubts and bad guesses to be with him. She thought that what she always felt was missing, today, Mo Wushang's honesty to her, had made up for it. Your Highness, the Emperor is here. Double Happiness's voice came from outside the hall. Shen Yueji tidied up her messy clothes, and then stepped out to greet them. Seeing Double Happiness, but not Feng Jiuqing, she couldn't help frowning. Where is the Emperor? The Emperor knew that Jiaoyi had an accident here, so he went to the side hall. Oh. Without thinking much, Shen Yueji responded, and then walked past Double Happiness. However, he had only taken 2 steps when Double Happiness grabbed his arm. She looked back at Double Happiness. What's wrong? Double Happiness hesitantly looked at her slightly swollen little mouth. Your Highness, it's not that I want to remind you, but when you came back from the Emperor, your mouth was fine. Now I just left for a while, and your mouth is swollen like this. Not only this servant is suspicious, but even the Emperor may not think too much when he sees it. She sighed gloomily. Nyang, don't look at this servant's young age and haven't experienced the love between a man and a woman. This servant knows what I should know. Your mouth must have been bitten by some man. The corner of Shen Yueji's mouth twitched. She couldn't help but hit her on the head. You wild girl, what are you talking about? Shuangshi covered her head that was hit and looked at her with a depressed expression. Nyang, why did you hit Nubi? Ah. What Nubi said was the truth. She touched her lips. Is it really swollen? Double Happiness rushed to the dressing mirror in a few steps and took out a small mirror for her. Your ladyship, look, it's already swollen. Isn't it very swollen? Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell at a glance. Shinyueji, then what should we do? Since His Majesty is here, this consort can't just go and welcome him, right? Moreover, Wu Jiaoyi's accident happened in this consort's place. This consort has to tell His Majesty everything about Wu Jiaoyi's accident. Otherwise, what if people misunderstand? Nyang Nyang, this servant will speak the truth. Compared to Wu Jiaoyi's matter, Nyang Nyang should be more worried about yourself. If His Majesty finds out that you're having an affair in Phoenix Perch Palace and His Majesty finds out, Nyang Nyang will be finished. Shinyueji, anyway, your ladyship, you're injured. When His Majesty arrives later, this servant will say that you're not feeling well and will go to bed first. As for Wu Jiaoyi's accident, this servant is also clear about the process. This servant will just explain it to His Majesty. Chapter 520. Shinyueji covered her lips and coughed awkwardly. Perhaps it was because her mouth could not be seen in the mirror. She secretly noted down Mo Wusheng in her heart. This guy did it on purpose, right? He knew that Feng Jiuqing would come to her place. In the past, when he kissed her, his mouth was not so swollen. This time, he made it clear that she could not see Feng Jiuqing. Let's do as you say. Remember to tell him about Xiao Yu as well. No matter how His Majesty's expression is at that time, there should be many palace maids and eunuchs surrounding the side palace hall. This matter cannot be concealed. The more said, the better. Yes. Your Highness, don't worry. You know how glib my tongue is. After saying that, Double Happiness respectfully retreated. Shinyueji could only walk to the inner hall and lie on the bed. She touched her red and swollen lips and fell into deep thought. Perhaps she was really sleepy. She did not lie on the bed for long before she fell into a deep sleep. Still not leaving. Feng Jiuqing's hearing is very good. No matter how good our martial arts are, if we stay here for a long time, I am afraid that we will be detected by him. On the roof. Hong Fui crossed his arms and looked at the man in front of him. He did not need to look to know who he was looking at. He smiled coldly. Mo Wusheng, when you faced Gu Yuqing in the past, you were not so reluctant to leave, right? Why? Look at your distracted look. Even if you go to the North Underworld, I am afraid that your mind will only be thinking about her, right? If your body is gone, your soul will stay here. What is the use of going back? Hearing this, Mo Wusheng looked back at him. She has been rejecting me before. Did she not reject you now? If she did not reject you, would she chase you away to welcome the emperor? This woman, really, there is no good woman in the world, they are all. A burst of cold air spread from the soles of his feet to his whole body. Hong Fui was so cold that his whole body shivered. He looked at the man in disbelief. He did not know when the man had walked in front of him. He was extraordinarily handsome, but his face seemed to be frozen. He began to recall what he had just said to make this man so angry. Even he could look back with such a murderous expression. Mo Wusheng, you are not more serious about her than Gu Yuqing, are you? Please don't. Hong Fui's heart trembled. Gu Yuqing had almost killed him. If it wasn't for the Empress Dowager and the rest of them, he wouldn't even be alive. Now, there was Shinyueji. Shinyueji's status was much higher than Gu Yuqing's, and she was also the Feng Nation Emperor's favorite concubine. If the two of them fought over a woman, it wouldn't be much better than Gu Yuqing. Because he could clearly sense that Feng Jiuqing cared for Shen Yueji to a degree that was countless times more than he cared for Gu Yueqin in the past. No. Mo Wushang, tell me, how long do you plan to stay in the Dark North Kingdom? 10 days at most. 10 days. Hong Fui couldn't help but curse. Mo Wushang, are you joking? From the Feng Nation to the Northern Underworld, even at the fastest speed, it would take at least 6 days to go back and forth. Why did you go back to the Northern Underworld in 4 days? Just going through the motions. Or did he go sightseeing? Within 4 days, are you able to thoroughly investigate all those treacherous officials who are hiding in the dark and want to rebel? Even if you get rid of all the rebels and their henchmen, the vacancy in the Northern Underworld can't be filled in a few days. Chapter 521. There's the Empress Dowager. Hong Fui sighed helplessly and patted his shoulder earnestly. Ah Shang, the Empress Dowager is old after all. Look at her. She has been dealing with the internal strife for you for so many years. Other people at her age are already in their old age peacefully. If your dead father knew that you mistreated your mother like this, I reckon that even the lid of the coffin wouldn't be able to suppress him. Sooner or later, he would jump out and settle the score with you. You say, when he was alive, didn't he spoil your mother so much? If he knew that after he died, you harmed his beloved woman like this, I reckon that he would already be dead. Mo Wushang glanced at him indifferently and wasn't shaken by his words at all. If he is dissatisfied with me mistreating his woman, he might as well climb out and continue to be the emperor of the Northern Underworld. Hong Fui's entire face turned green from anger. After a long time, he finally said, Mo Wushang, do you know that your words will incur the wrath of heaven? The girl on the bed had already fallen asleep. Her sleeping posture wasn't very good looking, but it was just like her. Mo Wushang looked at her tenderly for a while, and then covered up an empty tile above him, cutting off her line of sight. 4 days is enough. When I come back, you will continue to stay in the Northern Underworld and help her. What? Hong Fui thought that he had heard wrongly. You want me to stay in the palace to help you clean up the mess? What a joke. Was he the kind of person who would stop? To him, the palace was like a cage. If he was locked inside, it was simply impossible to live or die. If you are willing, all the women in the harem are yours. Mo Wushang's eyelids lifted slightly and looked at him. Hong Fui, he thought of the beauties in Mo Wushang's harem. Each of them was devastatingly beautiful. Which one of them wasn't an outstanding beauty? In the beginning, the Empress Dowager had really collected these beauties from all over the world for him to arrange his marriage. Actually, Hong Fui, he was a little tempted. But even though he was tempted, he didn't want to take over Mo Wushang's mess. If he could get the beauty, it would mean that he had to stay in the palace. He couldn't go out even if it was day or night. Like the Empress Dowager, he had to help him deal with the affairs of the state, government, and those rebels. How could he sit still? No. He refused without thinking, how can I, as your brother, touch your woman? Haven't you heard of the saying that a brother's wife cannot be deceived? After all, those beauties were arranged by the Empress Dowager for you. I only have one woman and that's Other than her, you can touch all of them. Hong Fui was speechless. I think you can consider what I said to you before. If you really must have Shen Yueji, you might as well bring her back to the Northern Underworld. Anyway, the Feng Nation's emperor only cares about the country and benefits. When the time comes, when you stabilize the internal strife in the Northern Underworld, you can use the Northern Underworld's benefits to exchange with him. As long as it's beneficial to the Feng Nation, I believe Feng Jiuqing won't hesitate. Isn't an object. I won't use her as a trade. As he said this, he looked at Hong Fui beside him. Can't leave the country. I plan to marry into the Feng nation. Hong Fui was speechless. Was this guy crazy? At this moment, Hong Fui's mouth was so wide open that a duck egg could be stuffed in it. Chapter 522. Marry into my family. If the Empress Dowager heard this, wouldn't she die of anger? But looking at the man's serious face, it was hard for Hong Fui to doubt that he was joking with him. This guy was serious, absolutely serious. Since you don't want to stay in the North Underworld, then you don't have to go back with me. You stay here and check something for Hong Fui was speechless. I'm going to marry into the Feng Kingdom anyway. The North Underworld is no longer useful to me. Hong Fui was speechless. Mo Wusheng, are you crazy? The man heard and looked at him with an indifferent expression. Is there a problem? Hee. There was a problem. What's so good about that Xinyueji? Is it worth it for you to dig your heart out? You don't want Gu Yuqin anymore. You don't like Gu Yuqin anymore. Why? He had a change of heart towards Gu Yuqin so quickly. Have you forgotten what you did for her? The man's expression did not change. The woman I like is naturally good everywhere. If she is not willing, I will continue to stay in the Feng Kingdom with her and not go anywhere else. You. Okay. Hong Fui gritted his teeth in anger. But the man was so useless that he could not do anything about it. He fiercely spat. Okay, I will stay in the Feng Kingdom. Tell me, what do you want me to check? Huayang Palace. Lu Qingru. Why are you checking this woman? Haven't you always disliked her? I want you to find out who her backer is. Isn't it just a group of insignificant people from the Jianghu? Hong Fui snorted. What's there to check? Ji He said that Lu Qingru told her personally that there is a mysterious masked woman helping her behind her back. Oh. A mysterious masked woman. This, Hong Fui really did not know. He only knew that Lu Qingru was involved with many people from the Jianghu, and those people kept coming to the palace every few days. It could be said that the hat on Feng Zhiqing's head was green, but he did not realize it. You just said that the mysterious woman behind Lu Qingru was personally told by Lu Qingru to Xinyueji. The man narrowed his eyes and looked suspiciously at Mo Wusheng. I say, it's not like you don't know how Lu Qingru treated Xinyueji. You could even say that she had the intention to kill her, so how could she possibly tell her about this? Maybe this Lu Qingru is plotting something behind the scenes. Even I can think of this. Why are you so slow on this matter? Mo Wusheng, don't tell me you really want me to investigate. The answer was non-committal. Mo Wusheng looked at him indifferently. Investigate. Hong Fui said. Even if you know Lu Qingru has ulterior motives, you will investigate just because Xinyueji asked you to? Yes. You're hopelessly infatuated with that woman. If the Empress Dowager finds out, Empress Dowager has always wanted me to bring her a daughter-in-law. I believe that she will be very satisfied when she sees Hong Fui, alright, I will pay more attention to the Feng nation. You can go back first. I will leave Ji Chu here to monitor your every move. Mo Wusheng, what do you mean? You don't believe me. You have nothing for me to believe in. Once you do anything disrespectful to Ji Chu will tell me everything. Hong Fui gritted his teeth and stared at him fiercely. He sneered a few times. Alright, you win. Chapter 523. For the sake of a woman, he even disregarded the brotherhood of so many years. No, it was for the sake of two women. One was Gu Yueqin. And now there was Shin Yueji. It was obvious that Shin Yueji's position in his heart was much higher than Gu Yueqin's. He was afraid that if something were to happen to Shin Yueji, and another woman who was more important than Gu Yueqin suddenly popped out of nowhere, then he and Mo Wuxiang would really fall out completely, and there would be no need for their brotherly feelings to exist anymore. Auspicious Harmony Palace, is everything you said true? Absolutely true, Your Highness. In the bedroom, Deng Mama respectfully knelt on the ground. Perhaps because she had just woken up, Gu Yuan's face was pale and tired. But after hearing Deng Mama's words, she still proudly hooked up her lips. Shin Yueji and that bitch from Huayang Palace have never had any contact. That bitch is arrogant, and since Gu Yueqin's death, even the emperor doesn't like her. But today, she suddenly became so close to Shin Yueji. Especially when Shin Yueji left, she looked at her eagerly. Deng Mama, say, what kind of shady business do they have behind the scenes? This servant can't say for sure. I only know that Imperial Consort's body has not recovered yet. When this servant and the Empress went to visit, she still didn't get up to greet the Empress with the excuse that she was injured. Speaking of this, Deng Mama obviously paused for a moment. Your Highness, do you think what Xiao Yute said before she died was true or false? Oh. What thing? Xiao Yute said that everything was a self-directed play by Imperial Consort Shin. Even the fall from the Broken Heart Cliff to save His Majesty was a play that she personally designed. Hearing this, Gu Yuan frowned. This was hard to say. Because those secret guards at the Broken Heart Cliff were all sent by her, and even her mother and father didn't know. Those secret guards were the first batch of the Gu family's well-trained. If this matter was really planned by Shin Yueji in advance, even her father and mother didn't know that she sent secret guards to assassinate His Majesty and Shin Yueji. How did Shin Yueji know? Even if her goal was Shin Yueji and she didn't want to do anything to the emperor. Even when she sent out the secret guards, she had repeatedly warned them not to harm the emperor. Otherwise, they would be the ones to blame. Those secret guards were the Gu family's men of sacrifice. Their mouths were tightly shut. How could Shin Yueji, an outsider of the Gu family, know something that even her father and mother didn't know? At this point, Nyang, this is the most terrifying part about Shin Guifei. Think about it, what kind of place is Broken Intestines Cliff? A bottomless abyss.